Let's jump into the running backs, specifically your rankings, Matthew, compared to Yahoo, to show kind of exactly what you're talking about here. It's just that how things differ. So let's take a look at that. As we see, you have James Cook as RB13 on Yahoo's ADPs, RB15. James Conner, another 2-spot difference, 18 for you, 20 on Yahoo. Jaylen Warren, this is a bigger one, RB25 compared to RB29. And then Chase Brown, RB29 for you, RB36 on Yahoo. So a big disparity for these 4 players.
For sure. And what this helps here, what this shows you is that, if you're interested in Cook, Conner, Warren, or Brown specifically, they may go slightly later than where I have them ranked, which is just, it's good value for you. And so as you're sitting there going like, oh, do I want to grab this guy this round or do I want to grab him in the next round? Again, sort of seeing that will help you determine where you want to pick players.
Jay, I know you are a Najee Harris stan.
Yes.
But how comfortable would you be drafting Jaylen Warren? Because we've seen this offense utilize both of these running backs, and it's not like with Russell Wilson or eventually maybe Justin Fields under center, they're going to be throwing 45 times a game.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is the thing that you just see it in drafts time and time again. People just don't like the Q next to the guy's name. They don't like the red injury flag. Looks like Jaylen Warren's going to play week 1. So all the question marks about him, I think that is, in a way, the biggest inefficiency in drafting the late Mike Vrabel era in Tennessee, they've tried to use an inefficiency in their drafting of taking like injury guys and bad character guys. Didn't work out for them. Can work out in fantasy though. If you want to be taking advantage of people being scared of injuries or suspensions that may never happen, that is one of the big inefficiencies. I think Jaylen Warren's an example of that, where everyone's just kind of baked into their head that he's going to miss time. Like, no, it seems like he's fine, and he was able to provide value last year.
But even if he misses one game, whatever, it's going to be a run-heavy offense. Arthur Smith is going to use both running backs quite a bit. You think about the Falcons under Arthur Smith. They were actually 3rd in the NFL in terms of running back target share. He likes to dump off to the running back. Also partially the reason because, Desmond Ridder, what else he's going to do with the ball. But I do think running backs involved in the passing attack is a big part of what Arthur Smith likes to do offensively. And you think about last year, he was top 2 among running backs in terms of games with at least 4 receptions. He had 9 different games with at least 4 receptions last year as well. 7th in fantasy points per touch. When this guy touches the ball, he produces. And I don't have a stat for this, but just to the eye test, Jay, with all due respect to your beloved Najee,
Warren looks better.
Jaylen Warren looks better.
He's more efficient runner.
It doesn't even. It's not close to me.
It's not close. But we know Arthur Smith sees a 6'2", 220-pound running back and goes, okay, let's lock and load 15 to 20 touches.
Just one last thing on Desmond Ridder, who got cut by the Cardinals. I think he's going to sign for the practice squad, but he lost out a backup job to Clayton Tune. And so there's things that you can read into that. One, the Falcons just should be a lot better this year. If their starting quarterback from last year is getting beaten out by Clayton Tune for a backup job. And then also Arthur Smith, who came into Atlanta with pretty good pedigree in terms of an offensive mind, offensive play caller after his success in Tennessee. I still think this guy is going to be a good offensive coordinator and is going to be able to commandeer a pretty efficient running offense.
Let's look at the ESPN ADPs as well, because we went through Yahoo with the running backs. We'll show some of the same, but just how your rankings, Matthew, stack up against some ESPN ADPs. So Devon A. Chan, RB11 for you, RB15 on ESPN. Josh Jacobs, RB12 for you, RB16 on ESPN, so a 4-spot difference. Again, James Conner, once again, a guy that we always talk about being undervalued, RB18 for you, RB22 on ESPN. Raheem Mostert, who had a phenomenal season last year and is still the guy in Miami, RB22 for you, RB27 on ESPN. And the last one again, Chase Brown, RB29, RB38 on ESPN.
Yeah, there's an upside to Chase Brown, and even with, quote, half the work in Cincinnati, and we're still waiting to see sort of how that backfield plays out, but there's an upside to Chase Brown. Running back 38 is mind-boggling to me in terms of that default rank. Achane and Mostert both are potential league winners. Again, that offense is so explosive, and we saw both guys be very productive last year. No big deal, but Raheem Mostert, part of the championship-winning team for me last year here in our Yahoo league. And the other thing here is Josh Jacobs. I'm at running back 12. I'm going to do a whole rankings update this afternoon, so be sure to check that and look it out for rotoworld.com. I'm pretty sure Josh Jacobs is going to move up to running back 11 and maybe even 10. Again, because there's no one else. Like, again, with the injury to A.J. Dillon and
Marshawn
Lloyd being banged up, it's like him and Emmanuel Wilson. And so I moved him up, but just I think he probably moves up to running back 11. I was looking at it last night in terms of what I want to do.
Yeah, Connor, to me, Jacobs is one of the most confounding players in drafts because, yeah, you look at the depth charts, like, well, this is Josh Jacobs. They signed him. They can run him into the ground because of the way his contract is structured. And he won the rushing title 2 years ago, and he's a guy with first-round pedigree. He's clearly talented. There's that on one hand. On the other hand, he was terrible last year. He was terrible when he got opportunities. All his underlying stats fell off a cliff. And then my biggest concern is Matt LaFleur has said previously he doesn't believe in workhorse backs. He believes in just philosophically in giving multiple guys a chance to keep guys fresh. Now that philosophy is going to get tested because he doesn't have anyone else. Where do you think Jacobs ends up?
It's a tricky one, right? Now, I'm going to put last year on the whole debacle over summer where he got into running backs coming into camp play is a death wish. Like, that's just going to set them back. And remember, the Giants got things done early with Saquon Barkley, but with Josh Jacobs, that dragged out a little bit. He just didn't look anything like the player he's been his entire life. He got signed by Green Bay during free agency. He's been there for every single part of the spring and summer. So that part's out the window. The LaFleur part is hard to predict because they don't have anyone talented enough to be used the way they used Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in the past, where one series is Jones, one series is Dillon. So I'm going to buy in that they just have to use him as a workhorse. Yeah. The biggest factor for me, if he lives up to Matthew's rankings, are they going to throw him the ball? Right? Because there's a ton of wide receivers. There's guys that get manufactured touches like Jaden Reed. There's 2 tight ends. So does Josh Jacobs get the pass-catching equity that he needs to be that good in fantasy? But he should because he's good at it.
Yeah, I was going to say that's in his skill set, and I would think he will get at least some, maybe not massive, but he won't be a zero in the passing game. And the other thing is, to your point about attitude, I think that's so right because Josh Jacobs felt disrespected by the Raiders, and eventually they begrudgingly gave him a little bit of a bump last year, but it was like
a joke.
It was like a joke. Yeah, it was just something. Whereas the Packers obviously went out, they paid him a lot more money than I think people expected. You know what I mean? And the headlines are better than, to your point, like it's only 1 year guaranteed. It's a bigger headline than actual guaranteed money, but still, Josh Jacobs, it feels appreciated. He's in Green Bay where there's a winning culture. They're coming off of a playoff upset, and honestly they were close to playing for the Super Bowl.
Almost made the NFC title game. Yeah. Last thing before we move off Jacobs, A.J. Dillon got 178 carries last year, averaging 3.4 yards per carry. That would be my concern, is that LaFleur just wants to use another guy. Now, it's not going to be A.J. Dillon, but it could be anyone else. But I think that Jacobs will get more passing game work to make up for any kind of lack of fulfilling the ultra workhorse load.
I think it comes down to this. It's a good offense. It's going to have goal line opportunities.
Correct.
He's the only goal line player. Jordan Love doesn't steal touchdowns.
Nope.
They don't have a running back behind him right now. And even if Marshawn Lloyd gets healthy, that's not his game. He's not a goal line back.
Yep.
So, I would definitely be in on Josh Jacobs, at least for this season. Okay, last one on the running backs here, just to get back to Chase Brown and the upside, Matthew. Is it a situation where you have to still take Zach Moss with him, so you just have a giant piece of the Bengals backfield together?
I don't think so. I remember Joe Mixon had 309 touches last year. 309. So, I mean, that's now up for grabs. Mixon also, by the way, led the NFL in goal-to-go rushing attempts. He was 3rd in red zone rushing attempts. So, like, when they got in close, they like to run the ball and they like to give it to Joe Mixon. Now, is that probably going to be Zach Moss? Yeah, but I think there's an explosiveness to Chase Brown that isn't there with Zach Moss. I don't think you need both running backs. I don't hate it, but that's not something I kind of think you ought to pick a lane. And I think Chase Brown, actually, in terms of how I've seen drafts go, and you look at ADP, to me, Chase Brown's the bigger value than Zach Moss. He's just going way late. The fact that he is barely a top 40 running back on ESPN is mind-boggling to me.
Okay, you have a chance to win $1 million in the NBC sweepstakes on Yahoo Fantasy. Just download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to NBCSports.com/fantasymillion for additional details. What are you waiting for?
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.